Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. They say necessity is the mother of invention. In a war that has scarred fields and changed lives, necessity has also become a powerful teacher. Across villages and broken roads, farmers who once worried about weather and harvests now worry about metal buried in the soil, silent, waiting, deadly. They could not wait for distant bureaucracies or for slow, moving machines. They needed a harvest and they needed to survive, so they built solutions. A tractor is not just a tractor anymore. It became a shield, a remote, controlled workhorse, and a clearing tool that reaches into places where humans cannot safely step. Farmers welded and bolted, cutting and repurposing armor, using salvaged plates from wrecked vehicles and whatever heavy iron they could find. They attached rollers and plows and reinforced shields. They taught old machines new tricks. What started as a personal effort to clear a neighbor's field spread. One farmer's invention became a handful, then a dozen, then a grassroots movement. Communities pooled money, shared parts, and taught each other. The local blacksmith who had been repairing gates now learned how to bend steel to deflect blast, and the mechanic who fixed pumps learned how to remote control a tractor. The ingenuity is simple, and that is what makes it so brilliant. The idea is to keep people away from the blast. Remote control keeps a human out of range. Heavy rollers detonate or crush buried devices. Armor panels protect the chassis. It is engineering with a single purpose, to make the land safe for life again. There is something almost poetic about the image. The same hands that sow grain and tend cattle now adapt broken machines and twisted metal into life-saving tools. The farmer who once worried about pests now worries about pressure plates and tripwires. He uses the same resourcefulness that coaxed a crop from stony soil to coax safety from scorched earth. These innovations are not fiction, they are responses to very real danger. Mines and unexploded ordnance have taken lives in the fields, injuring and killing working people, even as they try to scratch a living in a land that feeds a nation. The scale of the problem is staggering. Whole hectares rendered useless, cattle penned in, sowing delayed, or impossible, until the ground is cleared. Farmers learned fast that speed mattered. Planting windows come and go, and missing one season can be catastrophic for livelihoods. Waiting for official clearance, when clearance teams are overwhelmed and equipment limited, was not an option for many, so they improvised, sometimes dangerously, but often effectively. Some of these machines are homemade masterpieces of practicality. Plates welded around the engine and cab, chains and rollers attached to strong frames, hydraulics modified to lower and raise clearing implements. Remote control consoles are often basic but effective. Handheld boxes or adapted drone controllers. The result is a machine that can run a strip of field repeatedly, detonating or disrupting buried devices before people set foot. The designs vary with what's available. In some places, farmers used heavy rollers, cylinders of steel or concrete, to apply pressure across the ground and activate pressure-fused devices safely. Elsewhere, they mounted plows and flails to detonate and fling fragments away from vulnerable parts. There are tractors with forward-mounted metal skirts and reinforced guards, and there are smaller remote platforms that can be sent into patches where the soil is too soft for a heavy tractor. There are stories of creativity that read like folk engineering legends. A farmer who used the panels of a burnt-out armored vehicle to build a protective cage around a tractor. A village that pooled money to buy hydraulic components so they could lift and lower rollers without risking manual work. A retired machinist who retooled a metal workshop to make parts strong enough to absorb blast. These adaptations are born from urgency, and urgency breeds cleverness, but cleverness without safety can be deadly. The line between innovation and catastrophe is thin. Many of the early experiments were risky, some tragically so. That is the hard truth. Improvisation saved fields and lives, and in other instances it cost people dearly. That danger has not gone unnoticed. International organizations and local authorities have repeatedly warned that demining is hazardous. Mines are designed to maim and kill. They do not discriminate between military and civilian, between soldier and farmer. Nevertheless, the farmers pushed forward because the alternative was the slow death of livelihoods and communities. Over time, some of the improvised designs improved. Engineers, both local and volunteer, started offering guidance. Military sappers shared knowledge when possible. Humanitarian agencies provided training or recommended safer practices, and where prototypes proved reliable, they were scaled up, welded in better factories, fitted with stronger frames, and built with redundancy in mind. In some cases, these community-built mine clearers have caught wider attention. When people start solving big problems at scale, others look. Videos circulated showing remote, controlled tractors creaking across scarred fields, rollers thudding, and the ground coughing up old metal. Those images spread across social media and into military and policy circles. That attention brought scrutiny as well as support. Experts asked, are these machines effective? Are they safe? Can they be integrated into formal demining operations? Some answers were cautiously optimistic. The designs were not replacing professional clearance teams or certified armored vehicles, but they could complement them, especially for rapid initial clearance to enable sowing and grazing. Where these grassroots tools succeeded, the benefits were clear. Land that would have sat fallow could be planted. Families could put animals out to pasture again. Markets got supply. And importantly, communities regained a sense of control over their futures, an emotional and practical turning point after invasion and occupation. In a handful of cases, the tools moved beyond improvised status into formal recognition. Local agricultural groups coordinated with defense ministries and humanitarian groups. Prototypes were tested, improved, and in some instances, formally received by armed forces or clearance units. The shift from a village-built machine to a piece of kit recognized by more formal institutions is not trivial. It represents a bridge between grassroots necessity and institutional capability. Of course, the machines are not magic. They do specific jobs well, clearing surface laid or shallow buried devices, pre-detonating pressure-activated mines, tripping simple fuses, and making initial safe lanes. They do not replace deep technical survey or clearance of complex explosive ordnance. Professional mine action programs remain essential for fully clearing contaminated areas and dealing with sophisticated devices. Still, the story resonates on another level. It is a story about resilience and the creative repurposing of scarcity. It is about people who refuse to be paralyzed by danger. It is about adapting what you have to the necessities of the moment. In wartime, resilience often expresses itself in small but decisive inventions, and sometimes those inventions ripple outward and become systemic. There are also ethical questions woven through this ingenuity. When civilians build tools to remove devices, are they being forced into roles that should be safeguarded? Is there a risk that the normalization of demining will lead to less investment in professional clearance? Those concerns deserve attention. The line between empowerment and exploitation must be watched. Communities should be supported, not left to shoulder risk alone. The international community has not remained silent. Humanitarian organizations and some governments have highlighted the dangers and the need for professional support. At the same time, some groups have worked to provide safer kits, share best practices, and support training. This mix of warning and assistance reflects a pragmatic balance, acknowledging the urgency farmers face while trying to reduce harm. Another dimension is the symbolic power of these machines. War seeks to deny normal life. Fields sown with grain are an act of defiance. When farmers reclaim land under threat and bring back harvest, they are rebuilding the social fabric. They restore markets, jobs, and routine. The sight of a tractor pushing through a field where, months before, the ground had been a battlefield is profoundly human. Technically, these machines remind us that low-cost, robust engineering can produce high utility. The best innovations are often not the most complex. They are the ones that fit the problem and the context. A remote control rigged to a tractor, a simple but heavy roller, a reinforced front shield. These are not glamorous, but they work where it counts. There are lessons here for aid and policy too. Supporting community-led innovations, providing materials and training, and integrating grassroots solutions into formal response plans can accelerate recovery. Small grants to buy hydraulic components or straightforward engineering advice on blast-resistant attachments can multiply impact. Practical, context-aware support can be far more useful than distant, abstract aid. Of course, we must not romanticize risk. The loss of life and limb that mines cause is unacceptable. Even the boldest invention cannot erase the trauma and hardship mines leave behind. For every cleared hectare, there are still places too dangerous to touch. The long-term answer requires investment in professional demining, in mapping and marking contaminated zones, and in clearing ammunition stockpiles and explosive remnants systematically. What these farmer-built mine clearers show us is a human truth. When institutions lag in time as a thief, people step into the gap. They do so with courage and with ingenuity, and sometimes with tragic cost. As observers and as a global community, our role should be to amplify the safety and effectiveness of those efforts, help make them less dangerous, more reliable, and better integrated into broader clearance strategies. It is also worth noting the power of shared knowledge. Videos, forums, and local meetings spread designs and techniques. A modification in one oblast can be copied in another. A practical tip from a mechanic in one village can prevent a life, ending mistake in another. That horizontal flow of knowledge, peer-to-peer, can be faster and more adaptive than top-down distribution, especially in crisis. At the same time, regulators and experts must set guardrails. Technical standards and minimum safety principles, like keeping humans out of the blast radius, maintaining remote operation, and avoiding improvisations that compromise structural integrity, should be promoted. Where possible, professionals should test and certify modifications, and where dangerous gaps exist, international support should step in. There are stories that linger. A grandmother who watched the tractor sweep a field that had been a minefield and weep at the sight of children running again. A local school that closed for months because the playground had been contaminated, reopening after cautious passes of rollers. A cooperative that pooled funds to buy steel for protective plates and then taught neighbors how to weld them properly. The broader lesson is one of agency. People in war zones are not only victims, they are actors. They suffer enormous harm, yes, but they also adapt, organize, and act to restore life. That agency should not be used as an excuse to abdicate responsibility. Instead, it should be supported responsibly. We should also remember the personal cost. Every innovation is shadowed by the memory of those who paid the price: farmers, family members, and neighbors who were hurt or killed by devices in fields. Respect for them means honoring their memory by pushing for safer, faster, and more comprehensive solutions. Looking forward, a pragmatic path emerges. Scale up what works, invest in proper equipment and training, and keep profitless but life, saving objectives at the center. Governments can provide parts, NGO can deliver training, and international donors can fund standardized kits and certified adaptations. That cooperative approach can transform local ingenuity into durable capacity. In the end, the story of farmers building mine clearers is not just about machines. It is about a return to normalcy. It is about people stubbornly insisting that the land should feed children, not lay them to waste. It is about communities that, faced with ruin, respond with creation. It is about reinventing safety out of salvage. And if there is a paradox here, it is this: the same war that destroys also drives invention. The iron and steel left behind by conflict becomes raw material for recovery. The wreckage that once blocked life becomes the scaffolding for rebuilding. There is a bitter poetry in that transformation. So when you see images of tractors trundling across fields with welded plates and homemade rollers, remember the stakes beneath the metal. These are not novelty machines. They are lifelines, provisional and imperfect, crafted by people who could not wait. They are proof that when a community must survive, it will innovate. At the same time, keep clear-eyed about the limitations. These machines are part of a patchwork response. They help reclaim a season, secure a pasture, or make a path. But the full work of clearing a country of mines and explosive remnants is a long, professional, and costly endeavor. It requires mapping, surveying, technical clearance, and sustained funding. If the story so far has a hopeful chord, it is the resilience of ordinary people. That resilience deserves support, not abandonment. It deserves safety upgrades, training, better tools, and integration with professional mine action plans. It deserves the dignity of a harvest returned and the safety of fields where children play without fear. To the farmers who turn tractors into protectors, your courage is visible in every pass of steel across the soil. You are restoring life one furrow at a time. To the engineers and volunteers who lent their skills, your work saved seasons and saved hope. This is a story about adaptation under pressure, about the creative reuse of wreckage, and about communities that refuse to be defined by their losses. It is not a final answer to a brutal problem, but it is a powerful example of how people respond when safety and livelihood are on the line. And as we watch and learn, the global community must respond in turn, by providing safer equipment, by funding professional clearance, and by ensuring that the bravery of those on the ground is met with the resources and protections they deserve. If you want to understand more about how these tractors and rollers work, or the safety principles behind demining, I can break down the technical elements in a follow-up. We can look at design considerations, what to avoid, and how humanitarian and engineering groups recommend proceeding. For now, remember this. The same land that was scorched by war is being coaxed back to life by the very people whose lives it sustains. That restoration is fragile but fierce, improvised but purposeful, and a reminder that human ingenuity endures even in the hardest seasons. Selected sources and reporting that document these grassroots mine clearing efforts and the risks involved include on-the-ground reporting and analyses by established press and humanitarian organizations, which describe farmers outfitting tractors with armor and remote controls and warn about the dangers while noting community-driven initiatives that have delivered mine clearing rollers to military and clearance efforts.